Hey everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today's video, I've got something crawling up my leg because I'm out in the garden. Great way to start the video. Today's video is what we eat in a week before we get into the food prep for the most recent grocery haul. So this is what we eat in a week, so a week sort of meals from close to the end of the last 6-week grocery haul. So I just didn't get it edited and stuff and out before I went to the grocery haul. So this shows some of the meals that we use using whatever's left in the fridge and freezer and leftovers and all that sort of thing, and how we get through that last 6 weeks and what we do. And everyone's always interested in like the meal prep and everything at the beginning of the 6-week period, where we do all the fancy meals and things like that, and then what we do at the end of the 6-week period with all the less than desirable stuff left. So for anyone tuning in, as I said, we're a family of 8, we live off grid, we shop every 6 weeks. So this is like the 5th week of the 6 weeks. And we work from home, homeschool, all that sort of things. So everything's done from home. I generally only show lunches and dinners. I have had some requests for breakfast stuff to be shown, and I will have to do it at some point, but it just doesn't even, I don't pull a camera out at breakfast time or anything like that. Like I don't tend to start filming until I get out in the kitchen to really get started, and breakfast is very much a bit of a serve yourself thing for a start, because at the beginning of the month we have cereal and things like that so the kids can use, or I've made yogurt and granola and they have yogurt and granola, or that sort of thing. So Darryl and I don't generally eat a breakfast as such. We have coffee. Darryl makes coffee when he gets up, and we have coffee, and then we have our first meal at around about 11 o'clock in the morning, I suppose, which we classify as lunch, and I classify as the kids' lunch. So they've already had breakfast once or twice before then, and then they have whatever we're having for lunch, they have for lunch as well, around about that 11 o'clock mark, and then they also have, you know, afternoon snacks and stuff, and then stop eating before dinner time and have dinner. So what I generally show is mostly that breakfast slash lunch meal that we make, as well as the dinner meal. They do eat plenty of other things, but breakfast is a mostly serve yourself time, especially in summer when it's nice and bright and sunny and warm early in the morning. Winter's a little bit different. I do a lot more baked breakfasts, baked oatmeals. We've got those new waffle makers to use, and that sort of thing. The kids sometimes have leftovers too, so they will just heat up leftovers for themselves for breakfast as well, so that's fine too. Yeah, this is a week of meals at the end of a 6-week grocery haul, mostly only lunches and dinners, and everyone likes to see these because they're a nice compact sort of a overview of what the kind of meals that I'm making, so it gives it just that sort of shorter, more compact view of that. So enjoy watching, and I will see you on the next video, which will start to be the new food prep from the newest grocery haul. But this one I just had lined up to do, so I wanted to get it out. Alrighty, so day 1 of these, we did frittata for breakfast. So we haven't been doing frittatas as much as normal throughout summer because we've had issues with egg production. Our chooks are still laying plenty, but we have some very large goannas who keep on stealing the eggs straight out of the chicken pens. It's driving me nuts. We do have netting, but we have trees in our chicken pen, so it's hard to get it completely sealed, but we're going to have to look at some rigid roofs with some Avery mesh or something to try and reduce them going in, because we are losing at least half our eggs to goannas at the moment. So we haven't done these too often, but it is something that we would normally do regularly. So I grabbed some silver beet from the garden. We've got leftover roast pork from a meal the night before or the day before, and then there's some cherry tomatoes from the garden as well. I slice all that up and stick it into a baking tray. I then mix a dozen eggs with 1 cup of coconut cream. You can use any sort of milk or cream there that you like. We use coconut cream. A bit of salt and pepper. I added some caramelized onion jam to this one too. You can add any sort of flavors you want there. I whisk it really well. You want to incorporate lots of air, and then pour it over all those other fillings and then bake it. I think I'd put a tin of corn in this one too. I normally put corn, any veggies you've got. One of the things that's good for this is, if you're not keen on eating the stems of broccoli, which I know a lot of people don't, we do, I like them in stir fries, but if you don't, you can grate them up to put in things like this. They add lots of good nutrition, texture and all that, but you can barely tell that's what they are. Corn works really well. Any veggies work. Any leftover roast veggies work. We do some with leftover roast potatoes and things like that at times too, but if I'm making it specifically, it's silver beet with some sort of meat, corn and tomatoes is really nice mix. Darryl's cut it up for me. I think I went inside to do work after that, and there was a child using doing the camera shooting because my tripod was broken. So it's superb footage of it, but this is what it looked like when it came out of the oven, and we generally just serve it with a drizzle of homemade mayo. For dinner, we did something simple. It's in the heat, we do a lot of simple meals. So one of the simple meals that we do is flatbreads. So I use my standard flatbread recipe. I'll try and remember to put it in the comments. I am still working on the website. It's not there yet, but I'm trying. So it's a standard flatbread recipe, and we had leftover chicken from the freezer. I can't quite tell looking back at this footage whether it was buttermilk chicken or it's like faux KFC chicken, but whatever it is, it's some sort of leftover breaded chicken. So what we've done is we heated that in the barbecue, made up a quick coleslaw, so just shredded cabbage with some homemade mayo. I use cowboy candy and stuff in my mayo, which gives it some lovely flavors, and you know, it's nice sweet, but the little bit of heat, it's very tasty. So some of that shredded cabbage in with the mayo, and then we served it on the flatbreads with some of the peach salsa. So that was a roasted tomato and roasted peach salsa. It was delicious. I was really hoping to get more peaches this month so that I could make more of it, but I didn't manage to, which is a bit sad. But I might be lucky to score a bit more stone fruit next trip, maybe not. It might be a bit too late in the year. But that was dinner that night, something super simple. On the next day, I'm using up hot dog sausages. So we had a pack of hot dog sausages still sitting in the fridge from the previous shop. We'd had hot dogs for dinner at one point, and then obviously hadn't done anything with the other packet. So I decided to make some of the Chinese style hot dog buns. Now these are something you get at a shop called Bread Top here in Australia, or Brisbane. I don't know if it's all the way Australia, but it's in Brisbane. And I love them. They're really tasty, and basically they are a slightly sweetened milk dough, Japanese style milk dough that you make. So it's a yeasted dough, made it, proofed it, and then once you've got it right, you cut it into portions and you spread it out into a bit of a sausage, and you wrap it around the sausages and then let it proof again and bake it. It's a sort of, it's a brioche milk dough type bun, and it's definitely sweet-ish, which is just, it's nice in this particular dish. You can put like sauce and cheese and stuff in when you're wrapping the sausages. I didn't do any of that because it was just too hard. There's flies everywhere at the moment in this heat, and some of the kids like the tomato, some of them don't. So what we did is we just had some ketchup on the side, and they could dip it in a bit of ketchup if they want a bit like a sausage roll sort of thing afterwards. So a really nice treat. I'm going to make them again this month. I might try and do the process a little bit better because I purposely bought some different sausages to try and make some more this month because everyone really liked them. So I'll try and feature them in a video to show you. For dinner, we still have cabbage at the moment. So that's one of the things that lasts nearly 6 weeks every month, and it's fantastic, which is why I buy it even when it's expensive, just because it lasts so well in the fridge for the 6 weeks. I had some overgrown zucchini from the garden, so I've shredded up the cabbage, diced up the zucchini, and fried it all off in a pan. I then added some coconut cream and some stock, some curry paste. It happened to be green curry paste this particular time, some fish sauce, some soy sauce, topped it up with some more stock and brought it to a boil. Then I added the ramen noodles. These are the Jinmailing ramen noodles that I get from Coles. They're $3.10 for a kilo, a really great buy, lovely texture of ramen noodle, and they're dried, so they live in the crates, which means that they're available for the all year round sort of thing. When you cook the noodles in the broth, it's going to thicken the broth right up because the noodles will keep on absorbing the liquid, and the starch in the noodles will thicken the broth as well. So if you want it to be more of a noodle dish and less of a soup, you can cook the noodles in the broth. If you would prefer it to be more of a soup with noodles, then you need to cook the noodles separately and then rinse the noodles, put the noodles in the bowl and serve the soup over the top. This was going to be just a noodle dish. It was really simple, something just made with no effort. I didn't even put any meat or anything in it. It was just a whole bunch of cabbage and zucchini because we had those really big ones that I'd missed in the garden, diced up, fried off with the seasonings, and then the noodles added. The next day, we're really sort of scraping the barrel of what's left. So I'd pulled some vacuum sealed meats out of the freezer the day before and stuck them in the fridge to defrost. So I just stick them in a fridge container in the fridge so that they don't leak on anything. And they sit in the fridge and they defrost, and I use them over the next couple of days. One of them was some pork mince. So all I did was I mixed up some flatbread dough. Again, we had flatbread dough. I cooked it up into flatbreads, and then I also cooked up and seasoned the pork mince just with my standard sort of flavors: paprika, garlic, salt, pepper, that sort of thing. Cooked it all off and then scrambled a bunch of eggs, and we had sort of breakfast sausage flavored pork with the scrambled eggs on breakfast wraps. So there was choices of mayo or sauce, or there was I think there was still some cherry tomatoes. There may have been some greens from the garden, some spinach or something as well, whatever anybody wanted to have with it. But it was just basically scrambled eggs, pork in flatbreads wrapped up with some mayo and barbecue sauce or whatever you wanted, and that was breakfast. For dinner, we had a simple cheesy tuna bake. This is another one that I pull out at the end of the month of shopping, generally speaking, because I buy tins of tuna. They sit on the shelf. They can be used whenever, which is handy. So I par-cooked some spirals in some boiling water, like normal. I cooked up a version of my cheese sauce in the Thermomix. This one use like flour as the roux, rather than like if I want it to be a stringy cheese, I use tapioca. So it's a similar sort of a thing. I do have to get, as I said, trying so hard to get this website working, but I have like 4 different variations of dairy-free cheese sauces that we use for various different things. This one is more of a white sauce with a cheesy overtone than like a cheese that I use for the top of nachos and things like that. So I spread a tin of tuna per bake, frozen vegetables, and then the pasta in each tray. So I use those big tins, you know, the 400 and something, 454 gram, I think, tins of tuna, 450 grams is a pound, isn't it? Pound of tuna, plus, you know, 700 odd grams of the frozen veggies and then the pasta. Mix it between the 2 different trays, and then I pour the white sauce between the 2 trays as well. Once it's all mixed through, I top it with breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are made up of whatever leftover stale bread that the kids haven't eaten, generally sourdough. I like to use bagels because they have all the everything but the bagel seasoning on them as well. Mixed with some of the, I don't know how to pronounce what they're actually called, but the little bits of pork, the fat that are left when you render your lard, we keep them and put them in the freezer, and then if you grind them up with breadcrumbs and any sort of seasonings, they work really nice as toppings for pasta bakes and things like that. So I spread that over the top. If you add a tiny bit of brown sugar in it too, then it gives it a real caramelizing, and then I drizzle a little bit of ghee over the top too, because again that helps it brown up and caramelize a little bit, those crumbs, and make them nice and crunchy. So I poured that over the top and then baked them in the barbecue. Darryl served them up for me as well, so there's a short footage here of him serving them up. But just remember that with the tripod is broken at this stage too, so a lot of my shots are a little questionable, and Darryl was being nice by taking footage of serving it up because I was obviously doing something else as well. On day 4 for lunch, we had flatbreads again. Can you see a theme here of what we use at the end of the 6 weeks? It's been too hot to make loaves of bread and stuff much lately. I have problems if I use yeasted dough, it just proofs too quickly and overproofs. Sourdough tends to get really sloppy. I haven't been making much in the way of loaves. I make hamburger buns, hot dog buns, and flatbreads. They're just the easiest thing to make in this kind of temperature. So we had flatbreads with some shredded cabbage dressed with the freshly made mayo, so basically a little bit of a coleslaw. And then I had a mystery meat that was vacuum sealed from the freezer, so I hadn't labelled it, and we pulled it out, and it was obviously a pre-cooked meat of some sort in a portion that was suitable for like lunch meals. It turned out to be barbecue pulled pork, so that worked quite well. So we had barbecue pulled pork with coleslaw on flatbreads for lunch that day. For dinner we had udon noodles, so I marinated some chicken in like a, you know, sweet chili sauce, peanut butter, soy sauce, kind of a satay type deal. Cooked off cabbage and frozen veg in the pans, and then added the chicken in to cook that off as well. I put the shelf-stable udon, so these are the ones that I buy from Coles brand, and I just bought some Aldi ones in the most recent shop. We'll see how they go. In some water, bring it to a boil, turn it off, drain them, rinse them in cold water, and then they're ready to go. We add the noodles to the pans once everything else is cooked, and then add the noodle sauce, which is, you know, a standard cornstarch with oyster sauce, soy sauce, shushing wine, a bit of pepper, a tiny bit of sugar, bit of rice wine vinegar probably, a standard sort of a noodle sauce that we use, stir fry sauce. Put that over it and you cook it until it's sticky and tasty looking, and then you serve it. So a very easy noodle dish. It works well with frozen vegetables too, if we've got frozen vegetables to use. Did I use frozen vegetables? Did I say something about using frozen vegetables? I did. I used cabbage and frozen vegetables, so you know. Anyway, we had those udon noodles. The next day for lunch we had tortillas, so just, you know, a variation of flatbreads, but this time we had tortillas. Really quick to cook. You roll them out really nice and thin. They only take like 10-15 seconds on each side, and very flexible, so they're good to just do something slightly different with. We had some buttermilk chicken from the freezer that we cooked in the barbecue, heated, so it's pre-cooked, just reheated in the barbecue, left, and then I'm not entirely sure what we had them with. There probably would have been leftover coleslaw mix or any other salads that we'd used in any previous meals in the fridge, and so the kids just got the tortillas with the chicken and they could add whatever they wanted to it for lunch that day. For dinner we had pie. So I made the pie dough early in the day, my normal recipe with lard and olive oil mix. I refrigerated it for a couple of hours and then rolled it out. I am a very rustic pie maker. My pies never look particularly fancy, but they taste good, so that's all that matters. So I rolled it all out and I put it in the pie dish. It's a nice deep cast iron dish, pressing it gently and sort of stretching it as needed. I will tear pieces off and fix any cracks and stuff if needed as well. I'm really not that concerned. The pie never gets left to cool long enough that I'm going to pull the whole pie out of the pan anyway. It's going to be cut in the pie dish, so you know it's it's fairly irrelevant. So I had pie filling in the freezer. So this is pie filling that I had pre-cooked the previous month, I think. I think I made one pie and froze the other pie filling. So it's a chunky steak and mushroom, I think, pie filling. So I'd had it defrosting in the fridge from the day before, so I poured it into the pie base. Now, obviously the Ziploc bag had a hole in it or something and it was going everywhere, so my hands were covered in gravy, so I just used my hands to spread it out in the pie dish, so you'll just have to excuse the hands there. Once I got that filled, I cleaned off the mat where I dripped the gravy from the pie everywhere and rolled out the top. So just rolled it out to the right size, placed it on top, pinched, trimmed, and you know, put a slit in the top so that the steam could escape, and as I said, rustic pie. We served this with mashed potato and steamed frozen veg, and it's a favourite meal here actually. The crust, it took me a long time to master pie crust, and even though it doesn't look pretty, it holds up really well, and it's got a really nice buttery flavour, even though there doesn't have any butter in it, and it's short without being excessively short. It's just, we really like the pies, so it's something that I make whenever I remember that we really like it. What have we got? Next day we made some burger dough. So burgers had been requested for dinner, so I had to make the dough earlier in the day. So I made the burger dough up, and then while it was rising I made choc chip oatmeal muffins. I wasn't overly happy with them. I recorded the whole process, but I wasn't overly happy with them, so I'm not going to go in any more detail about them, but kids ate them, so you know, obviously they weren't that bad. They didn't do what I wanted them to do, but I cooked them up, the kids ate them. The burger buns were shaped and put in the tray to do their second rise, and then once they had done that, they were put in the oven to cook. And then I made the standard beef patties that I always make. I had some beef that was already minced out of the freezer. I added a bit of onion powder and salt to it and just formed patties. So Darryl I think that's why we had burgers, was Darryl had gone into town and he said, I'll grab some lettuce, tomato, and we can have burgers for dinner, so he grabbed that. And we served them with mayo and onion jam as well. Some of the kids have sauce or whatever with them. I like them with mayo and onion jam. And then we have day 7. So on this day, I didn't film lunch, but what I assume was that I always make enough burger buns that we can have them for lunch the next day, either with leftover meat patties or with bacon and eggs or whatever. So my assumption is that we had leftover hamburger buns on the next day, but I can't say for sure because I can't find any footage, but that's what I assume we had for lunch. For dinner, I made pasticcio. So again, we're using stuff from the bottom of the freezer, and beef mince was one of the things that was in the bottom of the freezer. So I grabbed out some beef mince. I made a bolognese of sorts, lots of chunky veggies. Again, from the freezer, I think it was a bag of grated zucchini and a bag of grated carrot and things like that, and lots of tomato-based sauce. So we just made a sort of a bolognese type mixed meat mix. I cooked up some penne. The penne came from the hampers, I believe. I don't generally buy penne. Any shaped pasta will work for pasticcio, but generally speaking they use penne because they lay it all out in a specific way. Now I didn't do any of that because that's all just too much work for me, but I had penne there so I used it. The sauce of it is a white sauce, and it's a white sauce that you add egg yolks to. I've done it before on the channel, but I didn't film the whole process. I think because the camera tripod was broken and it was all a little bit hard, but I might have to, there's a couple of these meals that people ask questions about all the time that I need to like do a video based on the actual meal alone without, and not with all the stuff around it. This might be one of them. So the white sauce has egg yolks added to it. So with the egg whites, what you do is you mix them through the pasta. So the pasta's cooked, just al dente, it's cooked, and then you mix the egg whites through the pasta and it cooks off in sort of ribbons, and then you layer the pasta in the bottom of the tray. Again, you're supposed to do it in a specific, like, keep it all lined up nice and straight and stuff for visual effect, but I just throw it in. I started with one tray, realized I had enough pasta for 2, so I split it to 2. I split the mince mix and then topped them with the white sauce. It's a lot like lasagna, but simpler because you're not doing the layering after layering sort of thing, but it has a very similar flavor and is probably much easier, really. I don't know. Lasagna has its appeal though, so don't know. You cook it till it's done, nice and brown on top. If you're using real cheese on top, then you know you've got your cheese melty, but we don't use real cheese. But all the components are already cooked anyway, so it can be a really quick dish to put together if you've got leftovers of stuff and you've just everything, like the white sauce was cooked, the mince was cooked, the pasta was cooked, so it's really only about getting the top to look nice and to heat it all the way through evenly and sort of just meld some of those flavors, I suppose. I have a bonus meal here too, just to show you some of the other things. This was more of a breakfast style meal that we had. It was still probably had for lunch, but it was more of a breakfast style meal because people ask. I made a basic bread loaf and then I toasted that in the cast iron. I put baked beans off the shelf that I've made, like the Heinz style tomato baked beans that I can, which I do need to make some more of, over the toast, and then fried eggs. The kids had the same thing, was just toasted up with beans and eggs. So this is the kind of thing that if I do make a breakfast, this is the kind of thing that I probably make, something that is simple but filling, but it just, yeah, it really just depends. I'll show more of them in winter, but this is the kind of thing that I tend to make for breakfast if I'm cooking a breakfast, though I am going to make all those waffles too. So that was a week-ish of meals at the end of a 6-week grocery period, so at a period when we're trying to scrounge some food out and there's a bit of repetition and things like that, but I still feel like we cover enough ground, that there's enough variety there that no one gets sick of eating anything. We still make it work, and we do have access to town if we really need to. We did buy that lettuce and tomato in that week so that we could have hamburgers. Not a necessity, but if we had the ability to do it, we could, and that's always nice. So I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks guys.